On my grandmother's deathbed, she asked me, "Do you know who your real mother is? What major plot twist moment have you had in your life?" The last thing my grandma said to me was, "See you tomorrow," and as I walked out her hospital room she said, not I heard her laughing from down the hall at herself. She died 4 hours later. Your grandma had the last laugh. While at a party about 5 years ago, I met a girl who I really clicked with. Friends wise, I'm a girl. I started talking about my boyfriend, but not by that title, by name. She proceeded to tell me she knew him and had actually recently been on a date with him and how it was the most romantic date she'd ever been on. My boyfriend of a year. Crap just got real. Yes, we broke up shortly afterwards. That girl ended up being one of my best friends. We are friends to this day. Traded a shitty boyfriend for a best friend. Sounds like you came out ahead in the long run. But that really sucks though. Not me, but I have a friend who found out that his sister that is 14 years older than him is actually his mother. He hates his sister. I kind of wonder if that's what's going on in my family. I have a cousin who is much older than the rest of us and has never really fit in with his family much. My grandfather was dying of cancer. He was a big, tough man and gradually just wasted away. Sometime near the end, he asked my grandmother to bring him a piece of paper and a pen. He wrote down all the names of his 27 grandchildren. Next to my name was a check. Nobody else had anything next to their names. My grandmother showed it to me after he died. She had no idea what it meant. I still think about that every once in a while. He wrote 27 copies of the list, each with a different check name, and asked your grandma to distribute it accordingly. When I was 7, I found my birth certificate in the basement of my childhood home. The name under father was not the man I'd believed to be my dad my entire life. I didn't tell anyone about it for years. Finding out at my grandmother's funeral that she worked for MI6, or finding out from my mother when I was 13 that the reason I hadn't seen my father since I was 4 was because he sexually abused me as an infant. Edit. I'm pretty sure my grandfather was also involved with MI6. He was a colonel in the British Army, did a lot of work for the Foreign Office, and was a special advisor to Thatcher on Northern Ireland in the 80s. My great-great-aunt had a 12 cannon salute at her funeral, and the reason why will remain classified until around 2060. I can't even imagine dealing with a piece of news like the second. I hope you're okay. When I was 15, my siblings and I were put into foster care. We had no idea why until the social worker told us that parents were using drugs. Our after-school jobs were helping them pay for drugs. They said our money was being saved. My dad wasn't my real dad, and 3 out of 5 of my siblings were half siblings. My real dad kidnapped my brother and I when we were babies. We were returned to my mom when he confessed to murdering a woman and then went to jail. He had since been released and we visited him to discover that he had started another family. It was quite the minfuck. When I realized that my mom wasn't always sick, she was completely wasted on drugs all the time. I was diagnosed with Asperger's just shy of my 19th birthday. Before that, I really had no clue just how differently my brain operated. I knew there were some differences, but I had just scratched the surface. My twin sister and I were born through in vitro fertilization. Our mom wanted nothing more than to have kids, and her circumstances led her to use a sperm donor. When we were 3 years old, our mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. When we were 6, she passed away. My sister and I were taken in by our aunt, our mom's younger sister. She already had 2 sons and a husband. It was a crazy and emotional time for all of us, but we have become an amazing family unit, and I consider my mom, dad, and brothers as much my immediate family as my sister. You might think this was the major plot twist in my life, but it gets crazier. About 4 years ago, I learned that not only did my original mother have sperm donated to her, but she also had eggs donated to her as well, by her little sister. I lost my biological mom only to be rescued by my genetic mom. All those years I had laughed at the people who said I looked like my brothers and my mom, but the joke was on me. When I think about the sacrifices my 2 moms have made for me and my sister, it blows my mind. Sounds like you have a pretty amazing family all around. I found out that I was adopted at a very early age. It helped that both of my parents are Caucasian and I am South Korean. Plot twist, you weren't adopted. The largest one for me was finding out my parents were never married, although together for 15 plus years, because my father was still married to his first wife, who miraculously got pregnant and had a child while he was in jail for a year for aiding and abetting a known felon. He's a converted Kentucky hillbilly that used to run moonshine back in the day. He refused to turn in his cousin. Multiple things occurred to me that day. My dad is a felon. I'm a bastard. I have a not quite half sister somewhere. My mother basically had long affair with my father. I hope like heck there is no inbreeding somewhere because this story is the epitome of the stereotypes I had heard. If you own a truck with a gun rack on it, I'm afraid you are too far gone. I was looking for my social security card in my parents' desk and I found their marriage certificate. It was dated 1 year later than I thought, 6 months before I was born. All of a sudden, the years of thinking my mother resented being stuck home with kids, the terrible resentful marriage they had, it all made sense. It took me until I was 16 to realize there was a reason my parents celebrated their anniversary 4 months before my birthday every year. I was a surprise baby. My mother is actually adopted, which was good, because I wanted to have pop with my cousin George Michael. The fact that you refer to sex as pop tells me you're not ready. Back when I was in college I got a girl pregnant. When my mother found out she broke down crying and divulged that I have a brother out there that I had never met. She had given the boy up for adoption long before I came around. I still wonder to this day if I will run into him. When I was 12 or 13, my parents took me out to eat at a restaurant. My dad gave me some change to go play a couple arcade games there, and when I ran out of money, I sat back down. My parents had completely serious looks on their faces and my dad asked me, "How would you react if we told you that you were adopted?" I freaked out a bit and then they moved on to a different topic. I wondered about it for years until I realized that I act just like my dad and I look like both my mom and my dad. Haha, trolled it for the win. I thought I was going to inherit my mother's boobs my whole life. I waited and waited. Then I found out that she got a boob job when I was little. She could technically still pass them down. Mine was finding out the woman I called mum for the first 16 years of my life was actually my gran, and that my older sister was my birth mum. Apparently she got pregnant when she was 13, so her mum decided to raise me. Now I've got no idea what to call either of them. Calling my big sister mum just feels weird. She may be your biological mother, but that doesn't mean you have to call her mum. Your grandmother has earned that, I think. I actually found out shortly after my grandmother died that she and her husband adopted my mom. From where or why, we have no idea. Mom and I know that we have the same type of ethnic heritage as the people she thought were her parents, which probably indicates she was adopted from somewhere within the family or close friends. Perhaps more interesting is the fact that on her deathbed, I was 100% convinced that my grandma was saying "I love you" and gathered the whole family to hear, only to realize that she was desperately thirsty and saying "I want juice." I hope you guys got her some goddamn juice. The day we found out that the doctors were going to stop being aggressive with my father's treatment was very difficult. My grandparents flew back from Florida to get his affairs in order. Apparently my dad, a near broke alcoholic, had not paid any of his life insurance premiums. My grandparents found out and paid all the late bills, which allowed my siblings to collect on the multi-million-dollar policy. To this day I am grateful because I didn't find out until a few days after about the whole situation. Now I have enough money to pay for college and buy my first home. My blood type is O+. I have often known that my dad's is B and had always just assumed that my mother had O. About 6 months ago, my wife had a major surgery and my mother asked me if I was going to be able to donate blood for my wife. I said yes, and so as a universal donor, she looked at me rather confused and said, "No son, you can't be O. Your dad is B and I'm A. I'm definitely O." My grandmother, mom's mother, called me later that day to convince me that my 40-year-old self was simply confused about my blood type. She then told me later to never mention it again. I lived with my father from 4-16. the entire time trying to convince him to let me move in with my mom who was 800 miles away. He never let me. I later found out this was because my mother's boyfriend was black and he disapproved of the relationship. I don't know your situation, but I feel horrible for your dad. I can't imagine how I would feel if my kid was begging me to let him move 800 miles away from me. I would feel like I failed as a parent. While talking to my mom one day, she, out of the blue, mentioned that she crap all over me when she birthed me. Game changer. All this time I thought I was a good kid. Turns out I was a shitty baby. That's actually a fairly common thing. Women push out a baby in their waist at the same time. You have been visited by the Good Lifts Beagle. You will be blessed with heavy, strong lifts, but only if you comment good form. Papa. I hope you enjoyed the video and were pleasantly surprised. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I post new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.